This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows.
This week, Planet Earth.
This is the 22nd century, the land renewed, the air and water pure again. The conflicts of the past are gone. It is a new Earth, new peoples and new customs. In some places, bizarre savagery. In others, advanced cities. Everywhere, new challenge and new adventure. And this is also the story of Dylan Hunt, lost in 1979 in a suspended animation accident. Over a century and a half later, in the year 2133, he was found and awakened by the people of this city called Pax, peace. The one place on Earth which escaped the final conflict of the 20th century. The one place on Earth where civilization did not perish. Dylan Hunt is one of them now, leader of a Pax science team exploring a much-changed world. Part of the Pax dream of rebuilding on Earth a new and wiser civilization. Their mission is mankind, rebirth of planet Earth.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that's finally back from hiatus. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan, and this week we're joined by returning guest Kevin.
Hey guys, how are you?
What's real, everybody?
I think it should be What's Real, Kevin.
Well, everyone can tell me what's real.
Just living like a dink.
Living like a dink, man. We're going to say the word dink so many times.
Yeah, wasn't it? We're burying a lead. Is that what they say in the business? Yeah. But like, man, they say dink so much time in this, and I laughed every time. I had to pause it, and then Laura was in a different room, and I had to come to the room and be like, "You won't believe what they're saying every time. They keep saying dink." She wasn't as amused as I was, but they keep saying dink.
Oh my god! I mean, this is a weird one, that's for sure. Oh
yeah.
Well, Jordan, we've been gone for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
What have you been up to?
Not that much. It feels weird not to be watching sometimes good, sometimes bad science fiction like every hour of my life.
Well, this must have been a treat to get back to.
You know what? This was a good one to start with, I think.
Nice.
And what episode did we do? So I mean, we can get right into it, I guess. This is Planet Earth, as Luke mentioned, and it is kind of, which we can talk about, kind of a remake of Genesis 2.
Not at all. I would say it's not at all a remake of Genesis 2.
It's kind of a sequel.
It's
kind of the next
sequel.
episode, yeah.
Right. But I should say, for anyone listening to this, for maximum enjoyment, they should go back and listen to the Genesis 2 episode.
Maximum enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've recorded the first one, Genesis 2, with Kevin. It was, I can't even remember, like episode 12, let's say, very early on. When we did it, we thought there were two remakes of it. We thought they'd attempted to reboot the show twice. So when I started watching this TV movie, I was so confused. I'm like, is this a direct sequel with a different cast?
You know what? It is a remake, but what they basically just did is, what if we just got rid of all that stuff that takes time? It's the becoming a superhero. Like, let's just get rid of it, and I don't know, do it in a really clumsy voiceover,
it's
and then
yada
boom,
yada kind of way.
All right, he's in the future and he's frozen. All right, let's get into the spacesuits.
It's funny. I did a little bit of reading on it. I actually do think it did well enough. They felt like they could bring it back and like keep going with the story.
This was a different network, though. This was This was ABC. So I like that two networks passed on this.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the second one.
They keep trying. And I mean, there's a third one, which must be the conclusion of a trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From what I've read, the third one is different. These first two are so much of a piece, and the third one sounds like they retooled the idea. Like, it starts with the guys. It's not just one cryo sleeper. It's three, and they're asleep in a space station at the beginning of the show. However, having said that, I would love to watch it.
That does sound like the third movie in the trilogy, though. It's like
right.
one guy frozen. What if three people were frozen?
Well, before we get started, can either of you recap what happened in Genesis 2, since we kind of have a bit of a sequel situation?
Okay, well, let's see. It was Dylan Hunt is the guy who in the late 90s or something is due to an accident where he's testing out the cryo equipment in some NASA bunker underneath a mountain on like Sunday afternoon when no one's around, and then there's like the second they close the door, there's like an earthquake or something, and he gets sealed in, and then he wakes up many years later, and what I'm increasingly realizing is just like the tropiest trope ever, because you guys just did America 2100, which is the same thing, and then I was thinking of Idiocracy, which is the same thing, or Futurama. Like, it's just this go-to sci-fi idea. But anyway, he woke up in
with a beard,
with a great beard, and then there was all the stuff about him staggering around like a drunk guy for a long time because of the effects of the cryo sleep.
Yeah, I can't realize why they would have gotten rid of all that.
Yeah,
him walking around a bathrobe, 20 minutes.
And then he had to interact with really boring people. Remember, there was all the stuff about their society. They kept talking about their super advanced society, but then you'd see someone playing a violin in the background, and that was supposed to represent how great everything was.
Yeah.
Now.
Right, they were so advanced.
So advanced. And then he was working for guys he thought were the good guys, but it turned out that maybe they were the bad guys, but no, they really were the good guys.
The good guys. He had to set some sort of slave people free.
And there was 2 belly buttons on that one lady, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I remember
great.
there was 2 belly buttons, and I remember he got on a horse that was laying down and rode it away.
It was really great.
Yeah.
And did you notice the return of the equestrian stuff to this?
I did.
I did think, who in Roddenberry's world was like, man, we got to get horses in this. We got to get some great horse action.
I know a horse guy.
That's a pretty good synopsis of it, and really is kind of what the show was, kind of a startup to a guy waking up in the future and discovering a bunch of tribes now. Humanity's been split into tribes, and he's now working for PAX, the peaceful organization, the Star Trek, if you will, of this new world.
That has super trains that travel anywhere around the world in one shot that they just reuse over and over and over.
Oh, those sub shuttles. They're real popular in this episode.
It's just that all the tunnels look similar. That's it.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we should get into it. Because it's something I like to do. We're going to give us some historical context for where we are when this show comes out. It's April 23, 1974. The population of the world has just reached 4 billion.
Is that right? It was 4 billion?
That's what Wikipedia said. Wow. Just reached 4 billion for the first time.
Ding, just rolled over. Ding.
Yeah, a little speedometer. Stephen King just published Carrie.
Was that his first book?
I think under the Stephen King name. I think he'd been writing under his
Richard
Bachman.
Right.
And Patty Hearst just robbed the bank with the SLA.
Oh.
It worked out well.
Yeah.
You're a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Big fan of all the Hearsts.
And that's what brings us to this IMDb summary for Planet Earth. A man awakens from suspended animation and finds himself in the 22nd century, where he finds that women rule the world and that men are slaves called dinks.
We're going to laugh every time we say it.
He is captured and sold as a slave, but he escapes and hooks up with a male rebel movement.
Everyone was really excited when they said they were going to go see the Amazons, right? It was all I wanted in the last one. They were like, it was like that thing of like,
because they mentioned it in the last one. They
mentioned
did,
something
right?
excited, like, hey, look over there. It's a lion riding in a hot air balloon that's on fire. But don't look over. Don't look. I'm like, no, I want to see that. It's like they mentioned the Amazons in the last one. I was like, that would be fun. And then in this one we see it. I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed. Didn't you think they were going to be a little bit like Raquel Welch and like,
right.
was it 3 million, 100
BC,
million years BC?
with the fur bikini and
that's what I thought it was going to be. But anyway, that's my own problem.
You're not wrong. This was, I think we went through it last time. There were a bunch of plots written up for Genesis 2 had gone to series, and this was one called Pet Shop. This was like a plot they'd been kicking around for that show that we had talked about, and we're like, well, that's a weird idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Roddenberry definitely had this thing, right? I don't know what it was in his internal psyche that made this an attraction for him, but he was always pitching this story, the idea that, okay, guys, what if we go to a place where the ladies are in charge and all the guys are wearing like collars and living in cages and saying mistress? And it seemed like over and over again in his career, people were telling him, Gene, I don't think that's a good idea. He was trying to pitch it as an allegory for something, and it's like, I think it's not an allegory.
What is the allegory?
well, that's the thing in this, and we'll obviously get to it. But by the end of this episode, there's an idea there, or there might be a moral, but you're like, is the moral that women are bad, or that men are bad, or that women should just be happy to be subservient, or it would be better society if women were in charge? Like, it's not quite clear, because it's just this weird, muddy, somewhat uncomfortable, like you're reading over someone's shoulder and they're writing like a gross diary.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're right, like we had talked to Luke and I before we started recording, I had it written down all the times he's pitched either this exact idea or something close. And it's like, he did it a couple times in Star Trek, and if it didn't get there, it went into another pilot, or it went into the cartoon Star Trek. Like, he just had this idea of this somewhat dominatrix kind of society that he clearly was interested in.
Right.
That he just was like, it's gonna happen, and he kept trying it, and it's all through this.
Well, I mean, the best thing I read online was someone said this is from Roddenberry's horny period. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it's his blue period.
Yeah. We start off with a bit of a prologue that basically does explain the first movie and sort of talks about how he was lost in 1979 and reawakened with Pax in 2133. Now, of course, we've got a new actor playing the lead role. No mustache this time.
No,
but he has at least 3 different parts in his hair to cover up some bald spots.
His hair is fascinating. I have to tell you, I was staring at his hair in so many shots trying to figure out what is going on.
So he's got. Here's my theory. He's got a comb over,
right,
for one, but then he's got a very Trumpian back comb over because I saw where the part was and it was halfway up the top of his head that parted down. So it's that weird thing you see on TV. I remember seeing on House. Remember when House was on the air? And for some reason they were obsessed with not showing that he had a bald spot.
Right.
It's like, why can't House have a bald spot?
Right.
What does it matter? But it was like this weird thing of you can't show that. And I feel it's the same thing on this. It's like, well, he's a leading man in the 1970s.
Yeah, come on, man.
You have to understand that when he gets that other woman drunk later, she's going to have to be attracted to him. So he better have a full head of hair.
I just want to say, as far as the opening sequence goes, that if you're going to start your show with a bunch of stock shots of raccoons and landscapes,
that was weird,
and then cut to a matte painting, which is like the worst matte painting, and then cut to Ted Cassidy wearing like this weird Lori Partridge blonde wig, like I'm in.
And
like I was so in the first 3 minutes, I was like, this is clearly just crazy garbage television, and I am doubling down.
Well, it's very funny because that's even in Genesis 2. There was that sequence where we got to see all those animals and very Davy Crockett. Like, he was committed to this idea. Even we'll get into it, but there's the sub shuttles we mentioned earlier. They're using the same shots from the original show.
You know, I went back and looked, and I think they actually made minor set modifications, but it clearly was the same set. Like, there was very minor. At first, when you first saw our hero, or Dylan Hunt, John Saxon's the actor's name with the awesome hair.
Yeah.
When you first saw him walk into the train, that's when I first realized, it's not just the same shots. They actually still have that set. They've got actors walking into it. It was pretty amazing that they kept that for...
Yeah.
There must have been a soundstage at Warner Brothers that just had that giant train set in it for a year.
Well, I think we had mentioned that what I had read it in when he did Genesis 2, it was what they spent the budget on. Like, they front-loaded on, this is the selling piece, like, this is our enterprise, this is this thing. Right. So I thought it was weird because... You're right. They did reuse it, and it looks fine. It looks like clearly the most expensive thing on this show, but they don't use it very much.
No, exactly. Same reaction. You'd think for it being such a centerpiece of the show, you'd be there a lot more, but he gets to Amazon land pretty quick and then stays there for a long time.
I mean, this opening is very Star Trek-y in some ways. Like, Pax is now kind of going on missions.
Yeah,
they have
away teams.
They basically have the Next Generation's uniform on.
Yes, which actually looked pretty spiffy. Big improvement over Genesis 2. I thought their costumes.
The coloring was a little bad, though.
A little off. Little 70s, little avocado colored. You know, not the most appealing.
We kind of see them on that first mission where they've gone out to California to observe. As I've got the quote here, is what they say. It's real something. They're trying to contact a population in the inland sea of California with a, quote, handsome racial mixture.
Nothing wrong with that phrase at all. Nothing wrong with that.
Illiterate but intelligent. And we don't see that rate. That's people they're going to see. They're coming back. They get attacked by, I guess, who's going to be the, running villain of the show, the Kriegs.
These guys. Well, there's a couple of things about it where you go, okay, there's interesting stuff, right? Like, first of all, they're proto-modern Klingons with the bumpy head and all. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, they got the prosthetics. It's like a bumpy head, but a mohawk kind of going in the center of the head.
So I thought they were going to be. They look like Nazis at first. I thought that was going to be the thing because the uniforms were like that, right? But then it's like, oh, they're Nazis, but then they take their helmets off. You're like, oh, leave the helmets off. They got bumpy heads. That's
what do they need the Nazi helmets for? And then they talk later in the episode. I don't think they talk in that first kind of Mad Max car chase scene.
No.
But when they eventually talk, they talk like someone trying to talk through a burp. Like they're doing that kind of like, I want to come to your house kind of thing.
Kevin, they're mutants.
I mean, come on, be real. Be understanding.
Well, they also have like a weird dialogue too, because they seem to refer to each other. They're like, private to captain. We should do this. Captain to private. You should do that. Like they like talk to each other by rank for some. It's a very weird culture that we get very little impact.
Very little of. I don't know why they're all wearing purple jumpsuits.
And their cars, they all have cars still from the past, but they're wood burning.
Yes. Which I thought, good on you guys then. You don't seem to have a whole lot of technology, but you figured out how to put ovens into cars and make that a thing.
It's a very uncomfortable ride.
Surprisingly effective. I did wonder how effective their cars could be when presumably there are no roads. Like, I don't know how good your Buick is when you... But I did like that kind of stuntman catapult thing that was very Mad Maxy on the back of the car, where the guy can stand in the back, sort of on the back trunk area of the car in this contraption and sort of guide the driver. And then it's great because the minute they hit something, that guy can go, wah, through the air out of the car.
It's true. That's kind of what happens here is our away team gets attacked by the Kriegs, and Dylan Hunt has to lead the team back to the subshuttle to get away. And it's funny because here, it took me a little while to figure this out, but I guess we're supposed to understand these are our favorites from before. Like, Harper Smythe's back.
Right. Great name.
Isaiah's back, played by Lurch again.
He's the only recurring person.
Right.
The recurring actor.
Right.
And then the leader of PAX, Kimbridge, also a new actor.
Right.
Far weaker actor, apparently.
Yeah. Basically no dialogue, right? He just gets hurt.
He gets shot immediately, and that's like the rest of the episode. It's like, we've got to save Kimbridge.
Right,
but there's like, you barely remember. If you saw the first one, you barely remember. And in this one, it's just like, why do I care if this man...
Can I just point out one more thing about Ted Cassidy in addition to his amazing wig? It was that they... throughout the episode, cannot decide on how to pronounce his name. It is spelled Isaiah.
Yeah.
But I wrote this down phonetically because I paused and listened to it several times. At one point, somebody calls him as Aya. And another point, somebody calls him as Isaiah. But I don't think anybody ever calls him Isaiah, which is actually how it's spelled. But anyway.
In the Natural Savage, it's pronounced Isaiah. They say that later. It's not me.
Oh
it's
my
not
God!
me.
The moment when he decides to pray for Peter Kimbridge.
Well, that's it. They're coming back in the subshuttle after this attack. They've escaped the Kriegs. He's dying, and there's a new character, Baylock, I think.
Yeah, Baylock. He seems like he might be interesting, except then he doesn't do anything, except fail to do things.
Yeah, he's got like a mind meld, or maybe he might be some sort of psychic.
I actually think he doesn't have any powers.
Right. He just says
because what he is, they're like he's an is it Esper? Is that what they said he is?
Yes, an Esper.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, so maybe try to heal this guy because he's being shot, and they're now on the shuttle, and he's like, yeah, let me try, and they get that like VO shot of him coming to grab the guy's head, and he's just like, yeah, I can't do anything. Like, oh, okay.
Your Esper powers aren't working. No, not today.
He kind of just diagnoses. He's like, oh, he's been shot in the heart.
Yeah.
Exactly. I could kind of tell that from the outside. I don't need to have Esper powers.
Thank you, Esper.
Can I say one thing before the shuttle?
Mm-hmm.
When they were fighting the Kriegs, and they had their somewhat intriguing-looking little sort of palm fisty ray guns that they were shooting the Kriegs.
Yeah, were
with.
they shooting darts or is it lasers?
I couldn't figure it out, but I did notice. I'm sure in one shot you could actually see John Saxon making pew pew sounds. I swear to God, you could see his lips move as he thought he was shooting.
I don't think you're wrong about that. You may not remember this, but that was from Genesis 1. Pax uses trank guns. That was the whole
I forgot
thing.
So that's what
that.
I was wondering, but I couldn't tell if that's what it was.
Yeah, that was literally from the first series. Like, we don't use weapons, we all use tranquilizer guns.
It goes back to this is just the next episode.
I do have one thing, and Luke, this is a little side note. But the whole point of the Krieg coming in, they were trying to find access to the train, right?
The subshuttle, yeah.
But they found where it was at the end. Like
Yeah,
they got up to the gate, and then they were like shooting at them. And they're like, "All right, smell you later, suckers." And they got on the thing. I'm like, but they know where it is now.
Yeah, because Lurch closed the gate. They made it like that. Well, that's it now. He closed that gate, which is like a gate a Portuguese family would have outside their yard. It's like, what is that? Like, thank God we brought the strong man because he's the one that closed the gate when no one else could.
We'll just come back later.
There's no way to get through that gate. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Anyway.
But yeah, it was a good question because we kind of lose them for most of the episode.
Totally. They're there in the first 10 minutes and they'll return much later.
We're racing back with Kimbridge. We get that scene that Jordan alluded to earlier where they can't help Kimbridge with this psychic guy. So Lurch, being, I guess he's supposed to be an Aboriginal man of some sort.
Of some sort, yeah.
He's like, I'll pray for him. And he starts doing a prayer, and Baylock just like, let that savage pray.
Exactly.
I was like, you're the enlightened race, and you just called Amanda savage. Pray.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you try to be forgivable because it's of its time, but also it's just like it just is aged so badly.
Yeah, even of its time, I don't think that works.
Yeah, maybe.
Let the savage pray.
I mean, this is supposed to be Gene Roddenberry, supposed to be so enlightened, but that was a bit much.
Yeah.
At any rate, they make it back to PAX. They can't help him. They need someone who's going to build a bioplastic prosthetic pulmonary artery in order to save Kimbridge. The guy who's good at it, he's busy in the Mediterranean. He's off on a Greek vacation somewhere.
They said Eastern Mediterranean area. They kept it very general.
So they're like, well, who's the number 2 guy? He must be closer. And of course, he went missing recently back in California.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, who's over there?
So basically sends them off on their mission. They've got to go back. They got to find him. And the last place they saw him was amongst an Amazonian colony of women who keep male slaves.
And what was the line, Kevin? Did you write it down? The line he had?
Oh my God! You mean when Gene wrote it
Yeah.
for the TV commercials? When he
Yeah.
practically stares right at the camera and says, "Women's lib or women's lib gone mad."
That's a much better reading.
Than John Saxon.
Yeah.
That was incredible because he is saying it essentially to camera.
Yeah.
But then as the camera pulls back, you realize he's not talking to anyone.
No, because then the other I can't remember
The rest of the team is sitting behind him and not looking at him. I'm just like, this is out of control.
You okay over there, Dylan? What were you saying, Dylan?
That's what they should have had. A couple more shots of people in rooms, and he's just in the background, still holding court with no one.
But yeah, I mean, that is like, if there was a theme to this episode, it was like, women's lib, that's out of control, you guys.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. But at the same time, tell me more about these men who have to beg for their food and lie on the floor at women's feet. Like, it's such a conflicted, this is terrible. Tell me a little bit more about it. Yeah.
I mean, everything we've watched kind of from this era, definitely, they love to make women's lib a joke. This in particular was just like felt way out of control in some ways.
So we've seen it, the joke in Genesis 2, Planet Earth, Beyond Westworld, what's that show where they were farming and they were jumping?
Galactica.
1980. It was in that one.
It was in the Leonard Nimoy show.
That's right. It's
right.
It's from like something from about 1970 to about 1980. It's just like,
Can you believe these chicks?
yeah,
It's the
yeah, just
attitude.
every joke.
I mean, the 70s going to get their shit together. I mean, 2019 needs to get its shit together too. But,
yeah.
but yeah, it is like such a weird kickoff. Like, first act's done, off we go. And like, they're like planning their mission as they get there on this sub shuttles. They're like, all right, Isaiah, Baylock, you two go off. You try to make contact with the leaders. Me and Harper Smythe, or as they call her this entire episode, which is great because that's how I wrote it in my notes. They're like HS. They like gave up. They're like, Harper Smythe. Why do we name her that? It's too long. Me and HS. I'm gonna pretend to be her slave, and she's gonna pretend to like women's liberation.
Yeah, exactly.
And they split off into two teams.
Isn't it a terrible idea? I was at the screen like, guys, terrible idea. There's only 4 of you. Why would you ever split up?
I know, it was such a quick like, we'll just split up. You guys, you're doing great. It's gonna go real good for everybody. And they kind of arrive, and the Amazon society it's more of just like a general agricultural society. Like, it's not
like
very
a
exciting.
commune. Yeah, I wasn't.
Well, what's weird about it is what you find very quickly is the men, yes, they're used as slaves, but it's more, they're sort of used as like oxen and cattle. So
right.
it's which is one of those things where I think it even comes up where one of the characters is like, you could use animals for that purpose. Of like, oh, but they're not as well trained as men. It's like, no, but they'd be much better.
Yeah, they're stronger.
Like,
you
way
could
better.
Actually get
Like,
more
I get
work
the
done.
idea, like, we don't like you and you're a piece of crap, so you're going to plow my field. But how much can a person possibly pull?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a well thought out society.
I don't think these women are very efficient.
But what is fun is as Harper Smythe walks in with her slave, Mr. Dylan Hunt, they bump into a woman on horseback played by a Gene Roddenberry favorite.
Dr. Pulaski.
Dr. Pulaski, Diana Muldaur.
And she's been in a lot of stuff. She was at least in 2 episodes of Star Trek, the original show, playing 2 different people.
Yep.
She played Dr. Pulaski. She played this. I think she might have been in one other thing of his too. So clearly he liked using her. And I'm going to say, this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it sound mean, but whatever. She is one of those actresses where somehow over the course of 40 years, she always was 45 years old.
Oh, no, totally. I totally agree. She always had like a harder edge.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful woman, but she always had this harder edge. She was never like an ingenue. She was never a young
Because she looks
actress.
exactly like she did in Star Trek, like 30 years later.
I mean, I don't know if I'd call her 45 years old, but she does look exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
You're really stage Jeff. This is what a 45-year-old woman looks like.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but the moment she appeared and her costume was shown on camera, I was like, hello, Star Trek original costume designer Bill Thies. Here, hello, yeah. You got the over-your-heart bra slingshot thing, and you got the
What if it's a V-neck? It's a V-neck, right?
Exactly. And I immediately thought, okay, it's a women's society. Everything organized by women, everything. The male gaze is not involved at all. So why is she wearing high-heeled boots and a belly button revealing costume?
It's just more
All of
comfortable,
the
Kevin.
women are in very a lot of skin showing on all of the women in the society. Doesn't make a lot of sense. She's playing a character named Marg.
Which I just thought was hilarious. Yeah. It's like calling her Colleen or something. It's like, Marg. Hey, Marg.
Marg immediately beats up Hopper Smythe and just like takes her property.
And when you say beat her up, she was just like, let's play for. She lays for it, and then she just gently pushes her, and she falls off the horse like battle over.
Harper Smythe like just falls down immediately.
Yeah. I would have definitely taken the old guy in the wig, wouldn't you? She was terrible. As your partner, if you're going to split up into two, take the big guy.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, absolutely. Why did you leave Lurch behind?
Yeah.
But yeah, Marg now owns Dylan. Dylan somehow, she leads him into town, and he's like peppering her like, "Where? Have you seen this doctor? You seen this doctor around?" She's like, "Shut up.
All right.
You're a dink."
Right.
And this
is where the word dink appears. Yes.
We're sort of introduced the idea that men are slaves, and their slave name is Dink.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that being said easily 1,000 times in this episode.
Yeah. And there's just some really funny lines in there.
Oh, so many. It's like
what does Dink look like?
Yeah,
a big dink?
A little dink?
Yeah.
A deformed dink?
How many dinks gonna fit in my hand? They don't say that at one point.
The combination of dink and the constant references to breeding.
Yeah.
He immediately looks concerned about something she said. I can't remember what her line is, but then she says, "Don't worry. You worried about gelding? Don't worry. We don't do that here." It's like, whoa, when did castration is suddenly part of the story? Or castration fears are part of the story?
Also, he never mentioned that.
Yeah, I know. She jumped there pretty quick.
I think it was because he saw them as like pack animals who were working in the fields, and he got worried about it. But yeah, she hauls
you see
them
those
off.
2 bricks over there? Don't worry about it.
She hauls them off to basically the slave auctions, where when they throw them in a cage for the people who are waiting to be auctioned off, already captured in this cave. They've been there an estimated 15 minutes. Isaiah and Baylock, the 2 guys who were supposed to go off on a separate mission, I don't even understand how there was time to kidnap them. But they're not only kidnapped, they're drugged to fear everything. They've been drugged with the Dink serum.
Well, the thing is, though, we don't even know they're drugged at this point, because that was my note. I was like, let's say they were gone a half an hour. Those guys got caught within the half an hour and were beaten into submission so bad that they can't even look up or anything. It's like later on, yes, we find out that they're getting drugged, but it was like, holy moly, these guys are terrible.
Yeah, and we kind of see an auction period here where they auction off Isaiah, and then no one wants Baylock, so they're like, all right, you go with Isaiah, I guess.
Well, they don't know that he's an Esper.
They don't know he's an Esper, that's right. And the
whose
women...
powers are nothing.
The women are all quite impressed by Lurch, because he's very tall.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh, look at this guy. He's going to be able to haul a lot of things for me. And they don't get around to auctioning off Dylan Hunt, though everyone's very excited for him as breeding stock.
Yes. Prime breeder stock.
Well, he's a real man.
Don't you need a breeder at your house? They say.
But this will be essentially the last time we see these 2 characters for pretty much the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Like, they've introduced 2 characters, like, they're part of the team. How quickly can we get them off this show? Like, how fast can we remove them? Like, maybe don't take them on the mission.
They're essentially the bridge crew, right? Like, they're there, but don't worry, Kirk's going down.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, don't worry. We'll put them in a separate mission somewhere else. You don't have to look at them. Lurch, who is the most fascinating person to look at, like, on the show. He's like, he's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a peculiar looking man, and then they gave him the worst wig of all time.
And hairband.
And a hairband, that's right. Well,
oh my god. Yeah, it's so bizarre. We do kind of get to see the drugging portion where they take him off and try to feed him some gruel.
Really effectively disgusting gruel, I must say.
Very
They did good on the gruel.
Very. Baylock managed to clue him in when they were together briefly, being like, don't eat the gruel. It's in the gruel.
it becomes a real Oliver Twist scene, wasn't it?
Yes, it does, with the little wooden bowls and the spoons. And
he avoids that and like uses his chance that night to escape from his, because he's not fearful with these drugs. But his escape lasts 30 seconds.
It's so ineffectual. I don't even know what the point of it is, other than to show that he's trying to escape. But
he's immediately captured.
He doesn't learn anything. He just gets bonked on the head.
Yeah,
falls over.
Gets tied up. Marg comes back in and just like directly feeds him the fear thing, and now he is also like he's eliminated from the story immediately as well.
Yeah.
By the way, the actual name is the Dink extract.
I know it is.
What it's supposed to be extracted from, I do not know, but the Dink extract.
Dink extract.
Some Dink extract is fine. I think they make some implications as like maybe LSD or something from the 60s. Like they're really trying to like play off like probably what is in the news at the time or something.
Totally. And you got to, during that sequence too, at some point there you got to see like the house dinks, like the house, there's the guys in the field, but then there's the guys around the house, including one guy whose job is just to play the harpsichord, which I thought was a very nice.
He had a pretty good gig.
Yeah, he's totally, compared to the oxen guys.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a way better job.
Well, this is kind of it. Harper Smythe, who, after she got pushed down, I have no idea what happened to her, but we kind of catch up with her, and she's just wandering aimlessly. She comes to a house where a woman lives with her dinks, and she's asking her for help. And the woman's just like, get out of here. And she's like, no, I just need directions. She's like, if you want directions, you have to fight me for them. And
I guess that's a tradition in their tribe.
Yeah.
their tribe is, there seems to be a real fight for anything.
For anything.
Information, like directions. But Harper Smythe like beats her up in front of her children in this also very easy fight.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah, if I was that lady, I wouldn't be challenging people to fight. I would go get some, martial arts training or something before I was going to be dropping down to fights.
Say she was about 45? Yeah. About 45 years old?
well, it's the same age as everyone in the movie. Yeah, they get in this fight. She beats her up and she's like, I just wanted directions. And for some reason, after beating up this woman, she's like, you know what? I like you. I like that you beat me up in front of my family. I think that was cool, a cool move. So she kind of moves in, and we get to learn a little bit about kind of their society and this drug that Marg produces. It turns out her family's been producing it for generations. Not everyone in this Amazonian society subscribes to it. This woman, for instance, none of her dinks are drugged. They stick around because they want to be there.
Yeah, see, that's like the nice slave scenario, right?
Yeah,
she's good to her people. Come on,
it's okay. This is all working out great for everybody. And so we kind of just get a little glimpse into what I guess is the fissure they'll start cracking in the Amazon society. Because I guess just like Genesis 2, if you're not going to destroy an entire society every episode, what's the point?
Yeah, right.
Is this what could we find out? There's low birth rates.
Yes. Not 1 in 5 households has had, which I guess is saying that the drugged dinks are not good breeding stock. Is that the
causes some performance issues?
Yeah.
But this woman kind of explains the fighting rituals of this, and if she wants to get Dylan back, she's got to go to the auction tomorrow and basically challenge Marg to a fight, and she can get her property back. And which is exactly what she does. We jump forward to the next day. A fearful Dylan is being auctioned and being quite manhandled by the women on the stage.
I loved it. The women just all come in like, let's just start tearing his clothes off. And he's like, oh no, don't do that. Don't show off my kind of in shape 70s body.
I know, he's really played as like such a heartthrob, and it's just like, the mustache was more handsome than this guy.
It's just, I kind of like it. It's that time period before all leading men had to be like quite literally bodybuilders.
Yeah.
So it's just like, he's handsome, right? And he's like, he's fine. Yeah. He's just like a normal guy, but they're like, oh, what a piece of meat that is.
And I must say, as compared to the name Alex Cord, who's his name, the guy who played Dylan Hunt last time, I do have more, maybe it's just residual affection from seeing him act as a kid, but I do like John Saxon. I just instinctively like him. Remember, he was the guy whose robot face would fall off in the $6 Million Man. For that alone, he was great. And he was in
he's still
the
acting,
Bruce Lee
too.
movie, Enter the Dragon. He had a big part in that, and like, so he was more of a genre guy if you grew up watching 70s stuff. So I always kind of like, but really, he's at best channeling Shatner in the way he's doing
I mean,
this.
that I think some people, not that there's that many people falling on either side of the argument on this, but it's either who do you like better, the Dylan Hunt. I personally, I think Saxon's better.
Right.
I think it's a more interesting. Yes, it's much more like Kirk, but this is an adventure show, isn't it? Like, isn't it supposed to be, as opposed to making kind of like, want to poke your ribs or whatever he was saying, these horrible like lines. I just think he's better than Mustache.
Well, fair enough. To each their own.
Who do you like better?
I like Mustache better.
Well, there you go.
I didn't mind. He was great. This guy, but because of the context of the episode, his smarm was turned to like 11.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well,
like,
in the scene that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
This seduction scene, it was kind of unbelievable.
So much smarm. We get a scene here where HS challenges Marg to a fight at the auction. She wins. It's a bit of a fist fight of some sort. Anyway, they have a bit of a fight out there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
In different moments, I thought, this is actually not a badly staged fight, and then there'd be other moments where
I like where they got up and they were just hovering the hands.
Yeah, right.
It was kind of up and down. Like, if it had been cut a little tighter, it probably would have been okay. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, this is going okay, and then sometimes it's like, oh, this is a boring fight.
It's kind of boring, yeah.
So she wins him back. Just like when she beat up that woman at her house, Marg immediately respects her. She's like, come back to my ranch. I'll set you up with a room. You can look around for your doctor friend who's missing. I've got most of the out-of-state dinks. He's probably there.
Yeah.
You're probably going to find him where I'm living. So they kind of move in. She can't figure out why Dylan's so messed up, why he's so fearful. And they kind of have this scene in the bedroom where she's like trying to convince him, like, what's wrong with you? There must be some way to save you. She thinks, I guess, that way is to make out with him.
Yeah, that's a really awkward scene. Does this feel better? All that.
Let me rub your head.
It's sort of it's just playing the thing that she has feelings for him, but it's like, but that's a really uncomfortable way to show that in this show.
Yeah, you're drugged, Fred.
your drugged friend. Well, I mean, it gets more uncomfortable when they start making out and the scene widens and the doctor they're looking for is just standing behind them watching.
Yeah, how did he get in the room?
He's just standing there watching them.
That is to say, how did he know to come to that room? Like, of all the reveals, like, I assumed that they were going to pull back and reveal that Marg is standing there. But no, it's the guy you've been looking for, who we, the viewer, have never seen before.
I love it, though, because they spent, really up to this point, the whole episode is being looking for this guy. And then, they just went, oh, yeah, like, oh, he's just in the room. He's in the room. And he's wearing a really small red bow tie for some reason. Even though he's wearing a shirt collar that's open, the bow tie's right there.
He essentially has ended up at Marg because he figured out this drug thing early on, I guess, and he's a bit of a, since he's a doctor, he knew about chemistry. So he's been there basically creating an antidote.
That's his excuse anyway.
To the dink thing, because he wants to break all the dinks out of their stupor.
Yeah.
Which is very fortunate because he's able to use it to help Dylan get back to his normal self. And they're like, we need a plan. We need to get this doctor back to take care of Cambridge, which up to this point, I think in the plot, I'd forgotten was even happening.
Yeah, completely. Remember there's a guy dying, pulmonary thing. Yeah.
Easily 45 minutes since we've talked about it. They're like, there's only one way to do it, and it's if we can trade Dylan for this guy, maybe Marg will go for that. And there's a very dumb scene where they like pretend it's like, well, I don't know if he's worth a much. Well, Marg is just like, all she wants to do is get a piece of Dylan for some reason.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they said earlier on, they kind of tease her. Someone in the town's like, maybe she secretly wants to be dominated by a man.
Yeah.
She's like, no, that's not it.
I mean, that's it. The plan is they're going to split up. He's going to maybe go save the dinks by putting a serum in all the gruel they produce. But Dylan, in the meanwhile, pretending to still be drugged, is going to seduce Marg and save the day somehow.
I was actually... Okay, this is a gross scene and it's weird. I actually don't know what his plan was. So the whole thing is, he kind of tricks her into saying he's a real good breeding stock at home. He's made a bunch of kids and she should really be excited that she has him. So
he knows all these secret techniques that she might be interested in.
So she's like, oh, I am interested. And what the technique basically is let's just get drunk. Which, fair enough.
That actually is pretty good technique.
Yeah, pretty good technique. So they both get really drunk. But then they play it kind of both ways because I thought, oh, the plan is, I guess he has a really good constitution and he's just going to drink with her. She's going to get drunk, fall asleep. He's going to escape. But then they go through the whole thing. She gets really drunk and she's kind of being a little more nice. And then when she falls asleep, he's like, darn it. Yeah. I was like, so he was really going through with
that's what's weird is he's pretending like he knows some secret way of breeding from he's pretending to be from some place that's really good at it. And to do that, he's going to get her drunk. And you're right. You're like, it's supposed to be a distraction, I think. Mm-hmm. But the drunker she gets, then, she's a little more looser. They're having a conversation and he's really pushing her. He's just like, now that we're on the same level, we can really have some fun. And it just like feels like he's about to rape someone.
Yeah.
A lot. In fact, it's probably the worst moments for this character because she's really drunk and he's like getting her further drunk until she's in a good place for him, which is weird. But at some point he like turns to her and he says, what about this? Maybe I'm a male chauvinist, but women's lib, men's lib, who needs it? What about people's lib?
Yeah, that was a real line. All lives matter.
Well, that's what it was. I'm like, this is awful, Gene Roddenberry. You're a bad person.
You're a bad person.
Yeah. But he also calls her pussycat in that scene.
Just like what a misunderstanding of what women's lib is to be like, no, men's lib. I'm like, that's not a Gene. That's not a thing.
Just before that scene was one of my favorite lines of the show where someone was asking, it was one of the other dinks, maybe her senior dink guy was asking Marg about her interest in Dylan Hunt, and she said, I may want him after I see the gruel wagons loaded.
Well,
that's like Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, exactly. The gruel wagons.
I mean, that line is exactly what he's there for because he's distracting Marg from the gruel wagons.
From the gruel wagons, exactly.
Because HS is out there berating all the dinks for doing a bad job to distract them.
Right.
Well, the doctor's like putting the solution to save the day in there. And that is basically was the plan. And we kind of let a day go past now. Like everyone goes to sleep and wakes up the next day. I guess to give the chance for this antidote to work. And
it's got to get delivered to all the other places. Everybody's got to eat their gruel.
And I guess it means Harper Smythe has left with the doctor. And in this, like, this has been an hour of this movie at this point. In this break, we come back. Hey, and the Kriegs are back. They've got a plan.
And we, the viewers, are all like, oh, right, the Kriegs. Oh, right, okay, those guys.
I forgot about that.
They might as well have just cut back to the guy who got shot, too. And he's like, God, I'm still a little sore.
Well, that's it. You cut to them. We get a little clip of them being like, "We need to attack this village." Up to this point, we had no idea they know this village exists. So
Right.
And we got to do it in the morning, and all their men are fearful, so it'll be really easy to do. And basically, we just cut to like a Mad Max attack of Marg's ranch. And Dylan comes out, and he starts, fighting for her. And they reveal they captured Harper Smythe and the doctor somewhere along the way. So, like, that Kimbridge is still not saved. The whole scene basically culminates, and the most obvious thing is, like, now that they're not drugged, Dylan calls all the Dinks to action. And the Dinks get up and fight back and save all the women. And it's just like the end of the day, it's like, and men save the day again.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm just like, what is happening here? What are we trying to learn from this exactly?
My note was men. Gotta love them.
It was, the message is so muddled by that point that I really think it's Gene wanting to tell stories about subjugated men for whatever reason that appealed to him. And then trying to loosely find a framework to make it make sense in his allegorical Star Trek-y way. But since he doesn't really believe in it in any kind of allegorical way, he's like, yeah, whatever. It's like, remember the story with the guy with the half black, half white face? It's like that. Anyway, the end.
I mean, that's probably a great way of looking at it, because this is like the allegory never clicks to make any sense. But like, he clearly is very much in love with this idea.
Let's talk more about this.
The important thing, the women have whips, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the guys have to wear ropes around their neck, right?
I love in this fight where they're fighting off the Krieg, Isaiah just shows up again. He rides in on a horse.
In a great horse moment.
Yeah, I thank God for another horse moment in the show from Genesis 2. But I was just like, oh, I forgot. That's a character on the show. Where has he been? Why is he here? I have no idea. But he does 2-on-1 fights some Kriegs because he's so big.
He does. He does one of my favorite fight moves, especially when you're a large man in TV, which is you take two guys' heads and then bonk them together.
And in this case, since they're wearing helmets, you actually get funny sound effects from the bong.
It's great.
Yeah,
so good. And this kind of concludes it. And there's this really confusing sequence now, and I don't know. It took me a while. They've won. They've got the doctor. They need to rush him back still. And they're like, I think Dylan's like, me and Baylock will take him. And they get in a car and drive away. And then the next scene is them driving back to the ranch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
And I guess we're supposed to assume they went back to Pax, dropped off the doctor, saved Kimbridge, and now they've come back to the ranch.
The weird thing is why Dylan needed to go at all, because they could have just sent him. But what I like is, what's-her-face comes in. What's the... I'm so bad.
Margs?
No, the female
Harper
Smythe. Harper Smythe comes in, and she just walks in and goes, hey, we just got a message, the doctor's all right. And I was like, hold on a minute. I've got a couple questions. One, why didn't we see that? And two, they're in communication this whole time?
That's what I exactly thought. They've got like carrier pigeons? Someone sent a raven.
I'm like,
what is this?
I'm assuming they're trading with this Amazon society. There's a lot of other ways that they could have dealt with this whole situation then.
Well, at some point, I think we did see Harper Smythe had like a weird... communication device, but they were never using it for any, like, as soon as you lost all of your team members,
right?
Make a phone call. Team.
Yeah.
Don't wander around asking for directions.
There's got to be more of those albino guys that touch people's heads, right?
But yeah, like now the Amazons like them again. Everything's cool. Lurch is making out with one of the women.
Yeah,
she has to stand on a staircase because he's so tall. And Harper Smythe just stands in the background, like, staring jealously at Dylan while he talks to Mark, and Mark's just like, maybe you should come back sometime. I kind of like what we were doing up there. It was just like, how are you attracted to this man?
This makes no sense.
But her hair's down now, so she's relaxed.
Totally.
So that women's lib is washed off.
Yeah. Well, it's people's lib now.
It's people's lib. He's convinced them that it's people's lib. And they basically just jump back to Pax, where we get to see Kimbridge is fine, and he's just like, "Tell me about your adventures."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Don't tell them."
That scene really reminded me of Genesis 2 because, like I was saying, with all the lame life behind the scenes moments in Genesis 2, there's really none of that in this. We're not really ever inside, other than in the train, right at Pax, but. Now we're outside on that same little bench that seems to be where people go to do things in PAX. It's like our one bench with our cement building in the background. And now there's a bunch of kids throwing a balloon around. Do you notice that? There's like a big red balloon. And they're just like listlessly throwing the balloon. But like, this is what we do. We go outside. We throw the balloon.
Not to get too hung up on the comparisons between this and Genesis 2, but am I wrong? Wasn't the city PAX is in Planet Earth, wasn't that the city that the villains were in that they nuked?
You know, I think it was. It's definitely some like California, like university or library. And I thought the exact same thing, that it was where the bad guys were in the last.
It's just like a set he loved.
I read that it's where they also filmed Planet of the Apes, the TV show.
Oh, great.
It makes perfect sense.
Which is what either replaced this or Genesis 2.
Genesis 2. It was Genesis 2. They were going to order it, but then they decided Planet of the Apes at the last minute instead.
But I mean, I guess the thing is that on this, Pax lives above ground. And the other one, they lived underground.
Yeah, and they're now above ground in this beautiful cement city. Brutalist cement city.
Yeah, totally. On that one little semicircular bench, which is the same place that at the beginning of the episode, he was doing his like captain's log.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't a captain's log, Kevin. Oh. It was I wrote it down. This isn't Star Trek. It was a narrator's log.
Narrator's log, which is weird because you already had a voiceover before that telling you over the stock shots of raccoons and whatnot. It just felt very strange to have. It felt like, again, it was what you were talking about, that we were just like fast forwarding past all the boring stuff that we didn't want to talk about. Yeah. So it's like men talking to you really quickly to explain everything. Great. Now the story starts.
Well, I mean, that book ends. Like the end of this thing, after they're all sitting around talking to Kimbridge, we get another voiceover from Dylan. And I've got it exactly here. It's he says, as the credits are about to roll, "The reborn planet Earth, 1,000 new adventures. This has been one of them."
1,000 new adventures.
I know. What a selling point.
Is that?
This is one of them.
Well,
there might be 1,000 restaurants you'll have in your life. This is definitely one of them.
This isn't even like, this was a good one. It's like, this is one of them. I don't know why you watched it. I'm sorry. But it like wraps up. It was it was crazy that I was just shocked by how weird it was to watch what I thought was going to be a reboot, but then felt weirdly not. It felt like this was an episode of a show that was never made, but now it's, I guess, a reboot of that episode. And it's like one of the episodes, like if this were Star Trek, this would have been one of the episodes that you would have been like, oh, that's not a good one. Just skip that one.
Right,
but this is like, we're going to make this one work.
Yeah. Totally. I totally agree. And it's weird even that it has a different title, I guess, because it was a different network they had to. But Planet Earth, I was also thinking, it's not a very good title. It's very bland.
It's marginally better than Genesis 2.
What about, let me pitch you something. What if they called it Genesis 3?
I like it. I mean, it would have made it much easier to Google. Trying to Google Planet Earth is just like impossible.
I know. I'm trying to find stuff on it. I'm like, Planet. I'm like, no, not that documentary.
Right.
I mean, I guess we can give some like closing thoughts on it if anyone has much to say. I mean, I gotta say, I was watching it and I'm just like, this is like, it's not a surprise. It's like when they dug up that interview with what's his name, the old cowboy.
John Wayne, where it turned out he was,
where that Playboy interview was like, oh, it was very recently, they're like, oh, right, he's a racist.
Right.
Like a real, like tarnishing a legacy, but there wasn't a big surprise. But I'm just watching this, I'm like, oh man, we think of Gene Roddenberry as this like real visionary who really like had this view of the future. But you watch one of these, and you're like, this is a real, you got a bad legacy, Gene. You weren't as good as we thought you were.
I think I said it on the last one, and that's for every crappy thing that he did, and as we watch more of these, he clearly had a lot of not very good ideas or not very well thought out ideas, or had an inkling of something and made a TV show and had a lot of chances, but you can't take Star Trek away from him because it is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's just an unfortunate thing that there's so much of the other stuff, but Star Trek is such a important part of the cultural zeitgeist that none of this matters really, right? Just no one remembers it, but it doesn't matter because everyone remembers Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like the family should just bury this so they never have to answer for it.
And speaking of the family, did you notice that Majel Barrett was in this, but that she never even got like a close up? It was like this big.
No.
She
was the woman on when he was in the tunnel. She was the woman on the screen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally missed it.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because he always got to get her in there somehow. Got to get the missus in there.
Gene.
Yeah. Gene, is there not a part for me? She wanted to play Harper Smythe.
Yeah.
She wanted.
Why wouldn't
he was like, what are you, 45? I don't think so.
Did you guys have a preference over the two Harper Smythes? I found them totally interchangeable.
I didn't know until I saw a thing where it was comparing them, and I'm like, but they have the same haircut and everything. I can't
totally.
Tell them
I wouldn't have been able to tell them apart either. Both characters were barely characters. I think in the first one, we didn't even realize she was going to be a major character until she popped back up at the end and he wanted to see her spleen or something.
Or pancreas or whatever.
Who did you like better, Isaiah or Isaiah?
Or Isa?
Yeah.
Honestly, you watch it and you're like, you realize keeping him in was just like, oh, the thing to do was to shift the series to be about him.
Right.
He would have been much more watchable.
Completely. And that's the thing. There's these little tone notes in it where you go, oh, that's a cool little thing. Like, let's talk more about that. But then it's off screen so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, even though his wig is terrible, he's an automatically interesting guy. The fact that he's native and still believes in his religious beliefs, clearly in a world where nobody else does, that could be interesting, right? Like, if everyone else is like, oh, stupid savage. But no, we're not going to talk about that at all. In fact, we're going to, maybe he's native just so that he can be a good horse rider. I don't even know what the point of his background is. And then the guy who's the Esper with the albino look like, I don't know, maybe that's an interesting guy. What is it to have mental powers? But all we know about his mental powers is that they don't work, and that he can't cure the guy, and that he's easily defeated.
Yeah, all of them could have a superpower if none of them works.
That's right.
It was a weird show. All right, you want to rate this? Mm-hmm. Jordan, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I looked at my old Genesis review, and I gave it a 4 out of 10. But I think this is marginally better. I liked it more because I felt it was more of a show that I could see further episodes of this. I know it's not good, but maybe he's going to go to another stupid little world where it's run by little people or it's run by animals or whatever. I'm just saying, hey, I didn't write the thing. But so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. However, I'm going to give it an extra point because they said dink all the time. So 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10 dinks.
Kevin, you want to go next or you want me to go?
I'm happy to go. I would also want to point out that at one point, Dylan Hunt says automobile, the same way Worf does. So I don't know if that was just a Roddenberry thing. People who don't understand, they know the word, right? They're aware of the concept, but just which emphasis to put on which syllable.
Never said it out loud before.
Yeah, exactly. I'm agreeing with you, Jordan, in that I think it's actually a really good pilot concept. It's just that the episode they chose to make is terrible, like much more so than Genesis 2, which I thought was more boring. Although overall, I remember giving it I think I gave it a 6 or 7 because I thought it was enjoyable. Like I was never bored watching it. But I think this is a stronger idea, and I could totally get, like, if I was, in 1974, I would have watched this, and I would have wanted to see what the next week's episode was because I would hope it would be better because this idea is so lame. So I don't know, 6? Maybe I'd give it a 6.
6, wow. I was so bored.
Really?
Oh, were you really?
This didn't do much.
Even all the sexual politics didn't intrigue you?
I will honestly say, talking to you now, Kevin, and the concept that this was probably what he was doing with his wife after hours, like
right.
This was the role play they were doing, has probably improved it in my mind a little. 1. I'm giving it a 1.
From 0 to 1.
Hold on. At the end of last season, we watched America 2100. And you gave it what, a 15 out of 10? What did you give
it's a much better show.
Oh man,
we and I have very different tastes.
I guess.
Well, I guess that about wraps it up. Unless anyone else has any notes they've got kicking around, they're desperate to get out there.
I just want to point out that another line of dialogue I loved was when someone said, "You can never be sure about us dinks."
I think that's the best way to end that.
Oh, I mean, we're definitely gonna getting into it, I guess. Jordan's going to put up some videos on the Instagram and Twitter, and he's shown me a couple clips of it, and it's just like, it's nonstop dink puns. Like, everything's an innuendo on this show.
You might want to rename the Instagram. Just call it Nonstop Dink.
Nonstop Dink.
Well, get a lot more hits that way. A lot more hits that way. You can also email us at continuumdrag.com if you want to hit us up. Maybe you watched it when it was out. Maybe you have some more fond memories.
Or watched it on home video, apparently.
Oh,
it was on home video?
Yeah, did you not see the opening had the Warner Brothers? It came out as, I think
I didn't even notice that.
Later on, they just must have gone, we have this.
There's a DVD release of it. This has been re-released many times.
Like, imagine that poor person who rented this or bought. Wow. I was like, I'm going to buy this Roddenberry thing. And I was like, what is this?
No
Is
kidding.
that Lurch?
Yeah.
You'll be surprised. You're not wrong. There's a lot of people who fondly remember it. Like, I was going through some reviews and stuff, and like, some people are like, yeah, I watched it when I was 6, and it's fun to go back and watch. I mean, I think it hit a zeitgeist at this period of time where people were like hungry for science fiction. I don't know.
I do wonder whether we should watch the third one at some point.
I think we're going to have to.
You know what it doesn't have though? It doesn't have Roddenberry. They took his idea and someone else made the show, it wouldn't have all the weirdness of Roddenberry.
I don't know. I'm willing to give it a shot. It could be a disaster. Maybe it's good though. Maybe someone's like, I got this.
I'm going to take this. Well, because again, both times we've said it's kind of an interesting idea for a show. It's the future. Society's broken up in all these factions, so you're traveling from one to the other every time, and you've got this conflicted hero because he's a violent man of the past living with these peaceful. It seems like it should be a good show. Maybe the third time's the charm.
I'm curious. I'm willing I'm willing to bet yes. Right now, I'm going to call it.
I'm going to say
it's going to be the highlight of the series.
Well, we'll see.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
We'll have you back for either that or maybe we'll give you something else to watch. We'll see. Jordan, it's great to be back.
Yeah, it's good to be a dink.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rexedler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes, Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Jane McRae, and Stephen Packard.